Good afternoon everyone, and thank you Lyle, thank you for the invitation. Yes, I'm going to talk about studio as both a place and a way of teaching, because it means both things. It's not just a physical facility, it's also an approach to learning design.
Just click on in the middle of the slide.
So the idea of the design studio is a historic one. It started in the notion of an atelier or a workshop in the 19th century, École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. And the idea is that rather than a teacher dispensing knowledge to students, that they would actually model behaviour. So they would be modelling behaviour and values and design strategies and the thought processes of a designer. So that basically there is a kind of a role model within the studio environment. And it's very much about that participatory way of teaching. So the students, the important thing is, and we just saw those marvellous studio spaces, is that students are working within the shared space, and that's a real key thing to it. And they often have 24-hour access. So often at design schools you hear about all-nighters, so students have been working all night on their projects. Unfortunately at Lincoln at the moment we can't do that. Since the earthquakes we've actually got a kind of a curfew on the campus between the hours of 1 a.m. and 6:30, which we do point out to students as an opportunity for them to go to sleep. They still complain about the fact that they're not allowed to stay in there all night and keep working. The idea is that it's an immersive environment. It's really about getting them in there, working with each other all the time, working with the tutors, very flexible, so spatially flexible, temporally flexible, and modelling a professional office. So the important thing about it is that we have it set up as though, because a lot of professional design offices now are very open plan, so for them it's getting ready to go out into that professional environment and to really think about how to conduct themselves within that setting. So we discourage them from treating it like an extension of their student flat. Very much about activity or problem-based learning, so that they get a design brief just as you would as an architect or a landscape architect, and work through it in this studio setting. So they're working on essentially a real problem and working through it alongside their tutors. One of the key things that happens in a studio is what's called a crit, which is short for critique, and this goes on throughout the whole studio project. So a studio project will often run for an entire semester, and our semesters are 12 weeks long. So the tutors are involved in both individual crits, where they come and work with the student at the desk, or a group crit where they'll gather the students together and do a sort of critique of the work as it's underway. So again, it's this notion of an immersive, ongoing process with the students, rather than just seeing them from time to time. We see them a lot of the time, often far too much. One of the key things about it is interaction and integration. So they're constantly interacting with each other, and as Jasper pointed out now, they're interacting across all years of our program as well. So it's an amazing opportunity for the students coming into the program to see what happens as they move through the program. It sort of demystifies it to some extent, which is really good, and really do learn from each other. We have a lot of mature students that enter our course, so often people in their 40s or 50s who don't tend to be as familiar with information technology. So they learn from the young students a lot about approaches to things like Photoshop and AutoCAD and things like that, and then there's kind of an exchange where those mature students bring other things into the program. They kind of have that very level, tranquil presence in the studio, which is often very useful. So the studio is both a space and a method of teaching. It involves this idea of sustained proximity in a shared space with interaction and collaboration at the core. So we've had a number of really interesting things happen in the studio that really have highlighted the way that studio process works. In July 2011, of course not long after the February earthquakes, we hosted the 48-hour challenge in our studios. We had 15 teams of 5 working together, so it's quite a lot of people working together continuously for 48 hours in that space. And they were teams of engineers, architects, landscape architects and students. Each one was assigned to a particular site in the city and worked intensively during that period. We catered for them. There was a place people could go away and have a short power nap if they needed to. But this environment enabled that collaborative process to happen. Again, that flexibility of space, the fact that we've got the technology there if we need it, and just the general positive feel of being in that space to be involved in designing. This is actually in a new studio space. It's kind of a temporary studio space because we have been very successful in our course and we've actually run out of room in our studios at the moment, so we're looking to extend it somehow. So this is a temporary space downstairs, but another example of a recent event. We had a masterclass with a visiting Australian landscape architect in July this year. In that case, it was professionals and students working together, so provided that an environment of sort of equitability, that we could work together and it wasn't any differential between the teachers and the students working alongside each other. So as you look at those images there, there's a mix of professionals, teachers, students all working together on projects. This summer we'll be involved in a multi-institutional collaborative studio, which is quite a big exciting moment for us. This studio Christchurch has run last year. All the architecture schools around the country collaborated together and it was hosted at CPIT. This year we're hoping to do a joint hosting between the School of Landscape Architecture and the CPIT. So students and staff from architecture schools and from our School of Landscape Architecture will come together, work together, and it's really a counter to what is really quite a competitive environment in the tertiary sector at the moment. We're not that encouraged to work together, we're actually encouraged to try to protect our own patch a lot of the time. So it's really nice to have that opportunity to share knowledge and to share our pool of resources and to look at Christchurch as a case study, because it's just such an amazing opportunity to think about what are new ways of designing and responding to the situation that we have. So again, another example of collaborating in this setting. Charrettes are another version of studio. So charrette is a very short, intensive studio, so often over a day or a couple of days. It actually comes from the French word for cart, because at the end of it they used to cart all the designs off in a little cart and take them off to be assessed. This is an example of a recent charrette. It's one that was run by Neil Challenger and involves students from around the world working together. So there's all these opportunities to put people into that environment, into the studio environment, and use that as a kind of a cauldron for creativity. Presentation day is something that we've instigated since we've been in our new building, because it just provides this opportunity for a lot of interaction between all the students and staff. So at the end of each semester, all of the studios conclude with sort of a festive day where we share the work. We often, each year, didn't get to see what other years had done in terms of their studio work. It's quite insular. So now we have presentations, exhibitions. We have this wonderful space outside that you saw before that we can set the barbecue up and students can be involved in hosting and hospitality. And then in the studios themselves, this is our student, they're called LASU, Landscape Architecture Student Social Organisation, do their own prize giving as well, so they give prizes out to each other. And it becomes really the core of the culture of our School of Landscape Architecture, to have the space that's strongly symbolic of collaboration. Our teaching ratios are really the core also of how the studio teaching works, and it's quite challenging to defend these teaching ratios within the tertiary sector because they're quite unusual. In the first and second year we have a ratio of 1 staff member to 15 students, and as we go down to our fourth year in the final semester it's 1 to 4, which is quite extreme, and it's really like a supervisor model for postgraduate education because they're all honours level students. They do a massive project that takes up most of their time in that semester, and it's a very intensive supervising model, so that the studios at the moment, about halfway through that project, is quite tense in there, I have to say, as those students are working through that. Another dimension to the design studio is something that we're developing at the moment, which is a design lab, and that's taking it on another step. So we're still using the studio model to develop spatial proximity, so everyone's in there together working away, and that notion of sustained continuous engagement as well. So you don't go away to your own office and work, you actually work there all together in the same space. It's a collaborative process. It involves postgraduate students, students and staff working together, students and professionals working together. So we even kind of impose that collaboration on the students in some ways, and that they have to make a pact with each other that they will work for the others one day during that semester. So they will go out, they might do interviews, they might help with developing design ideas. So they have to really get involved and make a commitment. The reason we use the word lab rather than studio in this setting is it's signalling a research focus, and that's again quite an important, a word with a lot of cachet in a university environment where a lot of our funding is based on our research output, so we have to be very conscious of that all the time, that we're generating research outputs. Internationally, design is being increasingly recognised as a form of research. So it's not just design for the sake of coming up with a design. Design is about finding out about possibilities, testing them, exploring them, and in that sense it's very similar to a scientific model of research. We model our design lab on Stanford University's, what they call D School, and this is a wonderful drawing from the D School on a serviette of how they think of how their school works. So you can see there it's about design thinking, it's about radical collaboration, taking on big projects, and thinking about how to set this up as a place that will achieve a lot of interaction between different areas. And this is their model of how it works within Stanford, and this is very much what we're looking at doing at Lincoln at the moment, is that you have the D School in the centre as this collaborative space. So it's a conceptual space and a physical space. All of these different areas, so medicine, business, social science, education, design, engineering, industry, are coming together, and also a relationship with industry out in the real world as well. So we're bringing problems into the D School and looking at design as a way of solving that. So next year we begin teaching a Master of Design at Lincoln University. So again, that's going to provide more opportunities for investigating design proposals and exploring those. This is our design lab. We've called it Landscope, so it's a sort of play on the word scope, everything from scoping things out to a telescope or a microscope. Within our landscape design lab, we have a number of themes, so there's just a couple of examples there. The one that I'm running called Landscape Memory and Identity, and my colleague Nick Abbott's Environmental Impacts and Innovation. So we're trying to be proactive in terms of attracting postgraduate students to our program, attracting research funding and so on by developing up these areas of interest. Thank you very much.